Resume, unlike a CV, is a short, sort of straight to the point document that's created for a purpose of applying to a specific job, right? Unlike a CV, which is a lot more long form, a resume is typically under 2 pages, and especially if you write out of your undergrad or masters, uh, at the very max you should go for is a page and a half, and not more than that, right? So that's sort of just a quick sort of explanation of what resume is, right? And pretty much sort of every time you apply to a job, and at this point, there's extensive sort of evidence that hiring managers typically sort of end up committing to what's called the 6 second rule, right? So it's in the first 6 seconds that you're going to give yourself a chance to and sort of catch the eye of the hiring manager, right? And so it's important that you sort of employ a few tricks to ensure that you were there and you sort of get through the first filter phase there, right? And how do you grab their attention? Essentially, sort of be very specific about what your skill sets are, and definitely read the job description for any job opening, right? And in your skill summary, ensure that you have these keywords and phrases that catch the attention of the hiring managers, and so that they know that you are potentially a right fit for the position that they're looking for, right? Be very clear and crisp and have extremely demarcated sections, and sort of so that the hiring manager is not making any more effort than required to go through the various sections of your resume, right? The moment you sort of make a potential hiring manager work, given the number of applications that they're going to probably see, it's unlikely that they're going to sort of be able to spend time on your particular application, right? Try to use two colors, but definitely not red or too flashy. I think one example I showed last time was different shades of blue. Typically, a light blue or sort of navy or somewhere in that range is sort of very useful. What the change in color essentially does is definitely sort of grab the reader's attention, right? Whenever there is a change in color, you're likely to sort of grab someone's attention there. Apart from that, I think another thing you should do is have two types of fonts. So for every section header, you probably want to use a font that's different from your main text. Your main text typically can be Times New Roman or Calgary, but your sort of section text can be a little different from that. But of course, nothing too fancy fonts that you should use, right? Um, Again, so a quick sort of tips in terms of how do you go about writing your resume. Always sort of mention the people that you worked with in the past. Could be professors, industry leaders, anyone that you think is going to signal to a hiring manager that you come with the skill set that they're looking for, and that's very important. Have a logical structure to the resume, and so this is something that we mentioned, that always sort of have it in reverse chronology order. So if you're doing a master's now, your master's information should come first, and um, then your undergrad, and so on and so forth. Right? And especially if you have a couple of years of work experience, then your work experience should come first, and your education should come later. Right? So there's a logical flow, and depending on which part of your career life cycle you are in, you would want to sort of customize your resume accordingly. Always cater your resume to the job. Don't have just one resume and apply to all jobs. Make tweaks as required, and you can sort of make these small changes, cater to the particular job that you're applying to. Apart from that, always include a skill summary, and it should be at the very beginning. And again, I showed an example. Maybe you can go back to recording. If not, you can of course reach out to me, and I can sort of share a couple of examples there as well. As I was mentioning, reverse chronology, and always use action verbs, so that there is a signaling being made that you sort of taken ownership of the kind of work that you're doing. Right. That's just a quick recap of sort of the resume. Now, in most places today, especially in India, definitely abroad, uh, resume is not the only thing, or resume or the CV is not the only thing they ask for. More often than not, a lot of companies are going to ask for a cover letter as well, right? So what's a cover letter? And that's sort of what it is. I mean, let's start with the very basics of it. What's a cover letter? It's essentially a tool that helps you introduce yourself in a slightly more personal manner, right? Where a resume or a CV is sort of very professional. You can take some liberties in your cover letter, and be a little more sort of personal there, and sort of express a few emotions there as well, right? So obviously, a cover letter is not just your CV or your resume. Your cover letter always sort of contextualizes the things that you sort of write on your resume, right? It essentially sort of, while you might say that you worked in a project that surveyed 10,000 people and you manage data collection and things like that, but in your cover letter, you should sort of expand on what you learned in that experience, not just in terms of the learnings from the study itself, but just the learning of the process of doing the activities that you mentioned that you've done. Right? So it could be sort of data analysis, it could be field management, anything of that sort. Right? Just I think the cover letter then contextualizes and gives more information to a hiring manager in terms of what the resume says and speaks about, right? And that's sort of very important, because that's something that, because everyone might say I have experience doing this and that, but it's what we look for essentially is what is your takeaway from a particular activity. Right? Are you learning? Are you sort of, as an individual, are you able to learn from the work you do and keep growing, right? While, as I was mentioning, a resume is sort of very objective, lays the facts, you've done your undergrad from your master's from your, so on and so forth. A cover letter sort of explains a lot about your personality, right? So you might mention, especially, let's say you've been in your master's and you've sort of been part of some activism or some kind of work that you're doing outside your academic sort of commitments, and that is something that's going to add value to your personality, add potential value to the organization that's looking to hire you. That is something that you should mention in a cover letter, right? And that is very important, that you sort of ensure that your personality comes, and that you're sort of someone who's sort of going to go ahead and be a great fit to the organization, and that's something that's required. Uh, Having said that, there per se isn't a very official sort of structure to a cover letter. As I mean, by the very fact that it's very personalized, it's sort of, there isn't a structure or rule of thumb per se, but there are uh, few sort of rules of thumb that you can use in some sense, and that's going to be helpful here, right? But of course, just there should be logical flow to your cover letter and organized so that there is a logical flow from one paragraph to the other, and it's very ordered in a very presentable manner, right? So that's sort of pretty much what a cover letter is. So what should you have in a cover letter? Right? Again, rules of thumb, three things. A great memorable introduction, because again, it the 6 second rule also applies to your cover letter, right? I mean, if you start by saying that I'm applying to this job because, I mean, that's very often, more than not, that's a put off, because I mean, hiring managers know that you're applying to a job, and hiring managers know that you potentially come with a background, right? It's about you need to have a memorable introduction in the sense that why do you think you fit the job, right? And you have to catch people's attention, right? Again, be specific, have examples of the relevant work. Again, it comes back to, you've written something in your resume, you need to then give in-depth examples of what your takeaways have been, what are the problems you solved, how do you tackle particular issues, all of that. Right? So that's something that you would do. And you would want to end with a very concise conclusion, very short, maybe half a paragraph at best, and to a call of action, right? It could be about, I look forward to scheduling a call with you. This is my email ID, my Skype ID, all of that, right? Or I look forward to hearing from you. I'm excited to potentially join the organization. It just should be a call for action there. And these simple rules of thumb that you can use to make your cover letter sort of stand out, right? So before I move on, maybe any questions that I can take at this point?
Hello, good evening.
Hi.
Azad here.
Hi, Azad. Yes.
So, as you said, I should mention some experiences or things I have done, and that somehow signals my abilities and the willingness to solve problems. I mean, that should be a, a signal to my abilities, right? So,
Yeah.
for example, say one of my projects in my masters, I took on a data set of say 160 countries. It was, I remember, a very big data set, like 2.5 lakhs or something like. So it was a very big data set. I mean, for my understanding,
Mhm.
right? So
Right.
should I include these facts? I
Yeah,
did.
so it's not about the facts. It's not only about the facts, right? It's not
Okay.
just saying that I've been able to collate a data set across 160 countries with about 2.5, 3 lakh data points. It's about what did you do with that? I mean, what was the problem solving? Or I mean, problem solving is one way of doing it, but how did you tackle a particular? What was the thought process behind it? Why did you choose 160 countries? How did you approach tackling the data set? Because if you're applying to a job that knows how much 2.5 or 3 lakh data points are, they would know that you're potentially going to face very common problems around how do you organize your data, how you clean your data, and maybe there you want to sort of explain the thought process. And for example, let's say how organized you were in approaching cleaning that data set, right? And that is something that you should do.
Is this a better example? Say I use this in my cover letter, right? I took on a data set of 2.5 lakhs, and before I took on it, I had no idea how to invert a matrix so created. Is it better than my last example?
Yes, exactly. Because you are then sort of mentioning that while you're in your CV, you may have mentioned that you've done a project with this data set. What the cover letter then does is that through that work, you've actually gained a skill and you've mastered sort of working on data sets. Even when you began that project, you didn't potentially have that skill set. And that's signaling that there is that willingness to learn. There's an ability for you to pick on new things that you don't know, and you're still sort of willing to take up the challenge. So that's a great example, Azar.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, so I have one question.
Jagan,
So,
Yes, Arvind.
so in case like I am applying for research assistant, so how it is important to search about the professor I am approaching, and should we include the work they have done and how it is correlated with the research, say in future?
Absolutely. And Arvind, it's great you bring it up because that's exactly the next point I'm going to speak about. So that's a great segue. And that's the first point of writing a good cover letter, right? You need to do your research first. You need to know who you're applying to. You need to know which company you're applying to or which professor if you're looking for our research associate. What is it that you do, right? And that is something that will go a long way in understanding who the company or who the professor you're going to apply to, right? So of course, go beyond LinkedIn, go beyond the website. Social media is a great place today, right? Especially if you're looking at research assistant jobs. The professors that are extremely active on Twitter, most on Twitter than Facebook, but Twitter definitely. So that is something I should do. So you should sort of understand what they're looking for, what's the kind of work they do, and once you have that information, you need to have use that information. And I'll get to how do you use that information. But the first thing to do is always do in-depth research. So don't just go to LinkedIn or the website, but just go above, right? Maybe look at the published reports, look at the published papers, and understand what their thought process is. How do they approach a particular problem, right? Because that's a great way when some people do great work, they obviously want to tell the world that they do great work, and that's a great indicator of the thought process of the organization or the people that you're going to apply to. So that's something that you should do. Yeah.
okay. Hi Jagan, good evening.
Hi, Shankar. Yes.
I want to ask regarding this memorable introduction. Why don't you tell us that what you would put in your cover letter if you are applying for some job, na?
Mhm.
So what is your take on that? Means how you start the means first phrase of like starting this memorable introduction. Can we have some clarity on that?
Yes. So after I sort of walk you through these are rules of thumb, I'm going to share my cover letter from one of the jobs that I applied for, and we can walk through how you can potentially write one of these cover letters,
Oh,
right?
okay, okay.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, Akal. Uh, right. So the first bit is do your research and do your research and sort of know about where you're applying. The second thing is the cover letter is always focusing on the future because you're applying for a job and you transition to a new position. You're transitioning to something new. So while your resume and your CV is always looking back at what you've achieved so far and your experience, your cover letter is pretty much around focusing on the future as to what do you want to do, what do you bring to a table to the organization, right? And this is something that Jodie Klickman, who's a communication expert, who teaches at Harvard University, Harvard Business School specifically, she sort of has a great take on it. Right? I mean, your cover letters are always sort of forward-looking than just expanding on what. It's always about you're looking forward to this. I've learned this so far. This is how I can fit into your organization, and we can grow together. Right? That's something that you should always convey in your cover letter. Right? Again, as I was saying, open strong. Start with a punchline, which essentially tells you, okay, this is who I am as an individual. Right? This is what I bring to the table. That's something that's extremely important. The next bit is emphasize personal values. And this is where you use your research at a certain point, right? You research your organization. This is where you fit in with your personal values and how that can add value to the organization or add value to a particular professor's research that someone's conducting, right? And how you do it is essentially sort of you want to provide evidence about your problem solving skills, right? Because end of the day, every job comes with its own set of problems and it needs a particular set of skills to tackle them. Having said that, what you need to do is match saying, okay, this is potentially my understanding of what a particular job needs, a particular skill set, a particular problem solving thought process. And you maybe want to then establish examples, right? So let's say maybe a job is around partnerships that you want to you want to be they're looking for someone who is responsible for partnerships and stakeholder management, right? Then your cover letter is largely going to be about how your approach to stakeholder management is and how do you troubleshoot particular problems, and that's something that you would do. So it's very important to, again, as I mentioned, not only look at the JD, go to LinkedIn website, go to sort of the websites, Twitter handle, but above and beyond that, look at published works and all of that. So, and that's going to give you a great sense in terms of how do you want to pitch yourself, because essentially a resume and a cover letter essentially is your pitch for yourself to the world. How are you going to, in some sense, market yourself in the job market? That's essentially what it is, and you need to, in some sense, be the best hype man for yourself. There can anyone be, right? So that's something that we should do. Cool. What you should always do is convey enthusiasm. Make it clear why you want the position, because hiring managers are always likely to sort of look at that passion and look at the enthusiasm, and likely to pick someone who sort of conveys in not as many words that they're passionate, enthusiastic, and this is their dream job. But having said that, don't go overboard with the enthusiasm. Be authentic, right? It's very easy if someone's reading an application, if you're not authentic about what you're saying, it's very easy to catch it, right? So it's extremely important that you should be authentic in your enthusiasm, but don't go overboard about it, right? Again, keep it short. Conventional advice is one page, but there is sort of, I personally recommend this to be shorter than one page, especially for those who are just graduating. Just keep it less than a page, maybe 3/4 of a page at best. Give the reader the most bang for the buck, right? They're likely to be seeing hundreds of cover letters and hundreds of resumes and CVs, right? So it's important that you are doing your hiring manager a favor, but not compromising on your pitch for yourself. So that's very important, right? Get feedback. One thing, again, is something I mentioned in the last session as well about on resume and CV writing. It's always a great idea to share your cover letter with a few people you trust and ask them to give you specific and pointed feedback. Ask them that this is a sentence I didn't like. This didn't convey a particular message that you potentially intended to convey. This is how someone else would frame it, right? And get that pointed feedback, and then you can sort of collate all the feedback and then go and sort of look at revisit your cover letter again, right? Cool. So quick summary then. Do's: have a strong opening statement and make clear why you want the job. Uh, Again, as I was mentioning, the 6-second rule also applies here. So be very succinct and sort of ensure that it grabs the hiring manager's eyes, right? As I was mentioning, contextualize the information you give in your resume and establish how you approach a particular set of challenges, right? Don't try to be funny. Often, a lot of people individually might think that you're funny. I think might know this, that I think I'm very funny, but that's not the case. We're not as funny as we think, and so never try to be funny. Don't send a generic cover letter. Always customize your cover letter for every job. This is a lot more important than just customizing a resume. While things might change very little resume to resume for each job, your cover letter has to be very, very different for each job you apply to, because each job requires it has a particular context, it has a particular need, and that's something that you should definitely keep in mind. Uh, as I was mentioning again, don't go overboard with flashy or enthusiasm. Be professional and mature about how you go about writing. I mean, you don't want to suck up to an employee because you want to work there. You need to be fair at your praise, and you need to be sort of fair with your enthusiasm as well. Right? So these are sort of quick rules of thumb, more so with the cover letter. Unlike a CV or resume, it's a lot more personalized, so everyone will have their own writing styles. So that's something that you should definitely sort of express in your writing, right? So before I sort of move on to show my maybe like an example of a cover letter, uh, any questions that I can answer?
Yes, so I have one question. So, like you, as you mentioned, it's the letter should have a strong starting statement or something.
Mhm.
So, like, how to exactly write a strong statement? Like, how, what to refer,
Yeah,
and what should be the background story and everything related to it.
correct. Right. Sure. So maybe I think this is a good point to share like one of my cover letters that I wrote. So this is what you want to start with, right? And so obviously the context is I've been in the research field for about 4.5 years now, and this was maybe a year back when I was trying to transition from my job to another job. So this is sort of what I looked at, right? And this is how I based on sort of what the position was. So this is the position I was applying to a 3IE, and this is sort of how at least I thought I could approach sort of the cover letter here, right? So sort of just laying down my past experience and working with policymakers, government agencies, and sort of academia in India, but my want and my goal to sort of transition into a role that allows me to do that in a much more global platform. So what I'm doing here in my first sentence is establishing sort of my experience and my expertise, but also showing that I am willing to take it to the next stage. I want to go and engage in a more global platform and look at policymakers and engage with policymakers in a more sort of that right. So what you do here then is sort of to sort of summarize sort of the kind of work you do and why you potentially a good fit. And this is like a very normal sentence that people write. Again, and you want to contextualize your partner, your sort of work. Here, I sort of contextualize by saying that a lot of my work is around working with the police and running large-scale RCTs in the country, evaluating various problems and various strategies to address gender-based violence in India, right? And and you want to look at your skill set. I cover experience managing large groups and blah blah blah, all of that, right? So again, so there's a fair logical flow. You're sort of setting the context, start with the punchline, forward looking. You want to sort of contextualize your skill set, contextualize the learnings, also uh, explain the kind of work that you do, explain the kind of work that you've done, key points, and that's sort of all that you want to do, right? And then again, if you look at the last line, it's sort of a call to action, right? I would love to discuss my previous experience with you in more detail over a call. I can reach to an email at this, via Skype at this. Hope to hear back from you soon, right? So that's how you end. So there is a call for action. This is something very specific. So you want to leave your resume and your cover letter on a cliffhanger, right? You want your hiring manager to want to speak to you. Like, this is someone who's very interesting. I want to speak to this person. right? So that is something that you would sort of try and do, right? So that's one example. By no means is this the only example or the best example. As I was mentioning, cover letters don't really have a structure as sort of strict as a CV or resume. So you can sort of customize it to whatever extent that you feel that is going to work best for you for the role that you're applying for, right? So Sankal, Arvind, I hope I've sort of answered your question with an example here.
Yes, sir. Sorry, Jagan.
Awesome, awesome. Yes, you can please call me Jagan. I'm not that old, but please call me Jagan. Please call me Jagan. Awesome, awesome. Cool. Any other questions
Can you suggest
I
some?
can sort of answer this one? Yes, Arvind.
Yeah, can you suggest some like books reference like to read so that we end up writing good? Because I face a lot of issues while writing cover letter or anything.
Mhm. Right. Again, so there are a couple of these resources that I can actually share maybe at the end of the session. I'll probably pass it on to Aditi, both the deck and a couple of resources that all of you can refer to. But I think one thing you should definitely do is always write the whole thing in one sitting, close the document, come back after an hour, reread it again, uh, make the changes, do it a few times till you feel that you're almost there. Once you do that, then you want to share it with the friends that you trust that are going to give you good feedback, and then you sort of do that iteration again, right? But so that's just the process of doing it, and this is likely going to take some time. But in any case, I will share some resources that can be useful to approach writing cover letters.
And like okay, adding to it, so while I was sending my cover letter, I was really like thinking about what should be the best time to mail them so that they are in a good mood and they accept it, or and everything.
Yeah, yeah.
So like, can you like do you think there is one standard time when people are happy to read these kind of things?
Yeah, never do it Monday morning or Friday evening. That's for sure. I mean, that those are two times you should never do. I mean, I can speak from my experience. Friday morning, Friday evening, I'm trying to get all my work for the week, whatever is left, wrap up. So I'm already sort of in that mad rush, and I don't want to do that. And Monday morning, I'm probably have tens of mails to sort of address. So I won't do that. So the best time I think would be midweek, and you can sort of typically do it not very early. So you don't want to send a signal. You don't want to be sending these mails at like 4 in the morning or 10 in the night. You need to be professional, and all of these add up, right? These are sort of signals that often go overlooked. So you need to be professional about how you approach these things. So midday, I mean, particularly sort of through the workday is fine. I mean, some days you may want to do it early in the day. Maybe not during lunch for sure, because that's when people are, again, their attention span is they're very very low. Maybe post coffee hour, so maybe like around 4:30 is a good time to spend, or in the morning as well is a good time to spend. But definitely not Monday mornings or Friday evenings. This is the context if you're sending these things over email, but a lot of organizations have portals now, so it shouldn't matter as much. But if you're sending it directly to an email, then you should keep these things in mind.
I have one question. I am
Yes, Bali.
Baliram.
Yeah. Yes.
I'm pursuing master's degree from JNU.
Okay.
I'm first year student. Uh, I mailed I I mailed professor for regarding research assistant.
Hmm.
Then I can't receive any reply from them. So how approach them again,
Right.
or I wait for you reply?
Yeah. I think that's a great point you make, Gulam. And this is a problem that all of us applying to a new job are going to face. People are just not going to reply. Unfortunately, it's of course frustrating for an applicant, but I've been on the other side as well. When I get tens of hundreds of applications, and it's sort of very difficult to reply to everyone. One way to do it is maybe wait like 4 or 5 days or a week and just nudge them again. and be very, very nice about writing an email. And you say, hey, Professor X, look forward to hearing back from you on my application. I'm extremely excited to sort of speak to you and hope I can work under you on a particular project, right? So be extremely nice. Don't be pushy. Don't send 10 mails. If they don't reply in 2-3 weeks time, it's unlikely. The chances are very low that they would reply again, right? But it's also unfortunate that people don't reply saying we're not considering your application. Unfortunately, it's it's uh, it's difficult, and I empathize with them. But ideally, they should reply. But yes, so that's how I would approach it. Give it a week's time, and then maybe send a follow up email. Be nice about it, and hope that they reply.
But one things I noticed that in India, no anyone, no any professor revealed their seat like a research assistant. I have I wanted as a research assistant, but uh, I mailed them for ki, uh, I want to I want to this I want to work as a research assistant
Mhm.
under your guidance or etc. But but uh, but can't proper communication or
Yeah.
proper information regarding these seats that available or not. So it's the very difficult to find out where is a vacant seat or not.
Right. That is true. I mean, that is partially true. I think, but things are improving, Baliram. I think that was not the case a few years back. Definitely, social media has helped, specifically Twitter. Um, uh, Today, sort of, there are some sub threads. There are like econ Twitter, sociology Twitter, academic Twitter, all of that. So it's a hashtag that you can keep following, and you'll see a bunch of these openings coming up. So it's a lot better than it is today. But yes, I agree. I mean, it is very difficult. There is existing information asymmetry, and there's very little that one can do about it. But I think things are improving. I don't think it's as bad as it was. So yeah, I mean, but Twitter is a great place for you to find this.
Okay, I will just download and I create my Twitter account.
Yes, yes, that's one thing you should do.
Okay, okay,
100%
okay.
you should do. Yes.
Okay, okay. Thank you.
Awesome, awesome, great. Cool. So if there are no other questions, maybe Arvind, we can close this session. Arvind, you can share my email ID as well with everyone, and if anyone has any sort of uh, any sort of doubts, feel free to reach
One more
out.
question.
Yes,
One more
Baliram.
questions.
Yeah.
Uh, if I work as a research intern, that is equivalent to research assistant, or something difference between these two things.
There is a difference. So internship is typically a short period. Research assistants a long time commitment, and interns typically you would researchers would take on a very short term basis. So it is different, but it can potentially be a stepping stone to a research assistant. I actually started as a research intern at this point 4.5 years back, and then turned into a research associate. So it's a very common sort of route to take.
Okay, okay. If I'm first year student, so what is preferring for me? That's
You should
interns
apply
as
for return
interns,
research intern.
intern, and
Yes,
wait for research assistant
exactly. And once you
until
graduate, yeah,
complete.
once you graduate, you can sort of apply for research assistant posts.
Okay, okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Awesome. So great, Arvind. Then we can probably close it if there are no other questions.
Okay, so I have one question if you would like.
Yeah, sure, sure.
So, okay, so so I received one mail that okay, we can schedule a call and everything, and it
Mhm.
was as per like it was available in from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. So I'm
Okay.
really curious, like which is the best time I should like book the appointment, and then I decided at 8 a.m. because 8 a.m. was like I thought maybe they'll be in good mood and everything. What should be the strategy for this? This is all abstract, so I don't understand. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that there isn't per se. I mean, this is sort of what works for you. I mean, it's also sort of you are a massive thing, right? If you're an early morning person, you should. I mean, if you feel that you're your best in the morning, you should do that. If you're not a morning person, if you have an option to not schedule a meeting in the morning, don't do that because all of that is going to add up to how your interview goes. But it's very subjective, honestly. I mean, there isn't like a golden rule for this, honestly.
And what about sending mail after the meeting? Should we do that, or is it okay to not?
Yes, I think sending a mail is definitely a good practice. Just saying, I've had a great conversation. Look forward to hearing from you and the next steps of the interview process. So that's normal practice too, and I think that's okay.
Yeah. So, is there any question? I guess like we don't have any other question. Thank.
Last question I want to ask.
Yes, Shankar. Yeah.
Um, if the JD job description need some sort of skill, but we don't have the experience in that domain,
Hmm.
but we have like some kind of knowledge regarding that,
Right.
uh, like we have attended some MOOC courses, some Swayam courses
Right.
of 7 days, or we have learned that thing, but we have not applied that skill practically. So we don't
Hmm.
have that experience. So can we mention that thing in our cover letter?
Yes, you should. Yes, you should. You should definitely, if you don't have like experience working directly, but you have academic training, uh, you should do that.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you for an extremely informative and valuable session. We are looking to uh, put the techniques we have learned today, and I'll forward your email ID to our members. So
Yes, yes. I'm more than happy to sort of help anyone who can reach out. Completely fine. Yeah.
thank you everyone for joining us today.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye. Good night.